Today we're taking a quick look at and showing how to install these front CV axle shafts available for your 2007 through 2018 four-wheel drive Silverado 1500. Now you should be checking out these options if you are looking for a relatively affordable set of factory style replacements to fix a faulty or failing set of CVs. All right, so quickly moving to our features here, guys. It's gonna be quick because these are essentially an OE replacement. And the biggest feature here really is the fact that you're getting a factory styled replacement or replacements that will get your Silverado back on the road again and do so affordably to, fix a set of faulty or failing CVs. You guys know the deal by now. You can see maybe you're leaking a lot of grease out of your boots, you're hearing some clicking while turning. If that's the case, then these are gonna be a way to freshen up your front CVs and again, do so for a pretty affordable price point. All right, moving into construction here, and as I just mentioned, guys, these are gonna be an OE equivalent, so I would say easily on par with the stockers in regards to overall build quality, dimensions, things like that. Now, these are a factory length option intended for use on stock ride height rigs, of course. Small lifts or levels will be acceptable here as well. And you are gonna be receiving two with this particular kit. And what you see is really what you get here, guys. You're getting the shafts themselves, axle nuts, and that's pretty much it. Now you are getting fresh boots, obviously clamps, everything is 100% new and ready to rock and roll for you here. And they are gonna be a factory replacement in regards to install as well, as we'll show you here in a minute. Price point for the replacements is gonna live in that mid to high $200 range here for the pair. Putting this right in line with some other more basic factory style replacements on the site, or maybe from your local parts store. But I will say they are gonna be far more affordable than going down to your local Chevy dealer and buying a new pair there. All right, last but not least, let's talk installation. And the site's gonna go with a very strong 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter here, taking around 3 hours or so to knock both out from start to finish. But now to give you a better idea of how things might go down in the garage or driveway at home, here's our detailed walkthrough and tool breakdown.
Tools required for this install include a couple different sized impact guns, an electric and a hand ratchet, clip remover tool, a ball joint tool, a rubber mallet, a hammer, 15 and 24 millimeter wrenches, 18 millimeter ratcheting wrench, a chisel, a caliper hook, a shortened 7/32 Allen wrench, an extension, T30 torque socket, 5/16 Allen socket, 15 and 18 millimeter swivel sockets, 10, 21, 24, and 36 millimeter sockets, a pry bar, and a pole jack. What's up, guys? Today we're installing CV axles on our Silverado, so let's get started. So I'm going to start up top by taking a 10 millimeter socket to remove these two 10 millimeter bolts holding our brake and ABS line brackets in place. Then I'm going to go up top, disconnect our ABS connector, use a clip remover tool to pop that clip out, and we can get that out of the way. Pop that bracket out of the way. I'm just gonna throw my bolt back there so we don't lose it. Do the same thing up here. And then go up top with your clip tool, pop that clip, and then press in on this black tab. Pop your connector out, and then I'm just gonna open up this clip using that same clip remover tool. Pop your ABS wire out of there and just drape it off to the side. Next, I'm gonna remove our axle nut. So I'm gonna take a chisel and a hammer to get in between the lip of this cover to pop that off. And then that'll give us access to that axle nut. I just work my way around in a circle. And just keep working this around in a circle until you get it to pop out. Now I'm going to take a 36 millimeter axle nut socket to remove my axle nut, and then we'll come back to this later to pop this axle out of the knuckle. I'll pull that washer off as well. Now next we need to remove our caliper. I'm going to pull this off as one complete piece. So we have an 18 millimeter bolt at the top and bottom. I'm gonna grab a caliper hook that I'm hooking up to my spring, and then I'll hang my caliper on that hook just so we don't put a bunch of tension on our brake line. I'm gonna get that in place and then take an 18mm swivel socket and remove those 2 bolts. And then just make sure you have a hand on your caliper before you fully remove this last one. Now once I've got it broken free, I'm gonna get my hand on it and fully remove it. And then just wiggle it off your rotor. And get your caliper hook attached to it. Now next, while we're down here, I'm gonna take a 15mm socket and wrench and remove our sway bar end link. And you can thread your nut out the rest of the way and then push that bolt down. And now I'm just gonna take a pry bar and get it on the lower control arm, pry up a little bit on my sway bar, and get my end link out. Next, we're gonna take a 15mm socket and remove our 2 lower strut bolts. Next, grab a 24mm socket and remove the nut on the lower ball joint. And then I'm just gonna thread that on. Just a couple threads, just in case that were to disconnect. Next, we can remove our rotor. I've got a T30 Torx bolt that's holding this rotor onto the hub. So T30 Torx socket, crack that bolt loose, and then run it the rest of the way out. And now we're lucky because our rotor just popped right off. If you are going to be reusing this after installing this, take a rubber mallet and just beat around the edge. You can also get it from the back in the spot the caliper was where there's no dust shield, just so that you don't damage your rotor and you're able to reuse it. Next, we need to remove our tie rod end. So I'm going to take a 21mm socket to remove this nut. Now, I like to push up on the impact gun while I'm taking this nut off. Sometimes it'll cause the tie rod to pop out of the knuckle. If not, we'll grab a hammer and just beat it out. And that popped out nicely for us. So we'll pull that off to the side, put our nut back on so we don't lose it. Next, we're gonna remove the nut on our upper control arm ball joint. So take an 18mm ratcheting wrench and pull that off. And then with that nut still on a few threads, take a hammer and just strike the side of the knuckle to get that ball joint to pop free. And once you got it popped out, you can fully remove that nut. And then we're gonna take a pry bar and just get it under the coils of the spring to pull that upper control arm out of the knuckle. Next, I'm gonna grab a ball joint tool to pop our lower ball joint out of place. So I'm gonna take these hooks and put them onto the knuckle. Make sure you're not on the boot there. And then thread this stud onto the bottom of the ball joint stud. And then take a 16mm socket and start tightening that stud down. And now these things have a tendency to go to the moon once they pop, so just watch your face. So now I've got a bunch of tension on there. It doesn't really want to thread on any further. So I'm going to take a hammer and just give a couple taps to the knuckle here. Now, while I was grabbing another ball joint tool to try this again, this did actually pop out for me. So now once you have that disconnected, you're just going to do a little shimmy to pop your axle out of the hub, as well as your lower control arm ball joint out of the knuckle. So now we just have our 2 bolts on the lower control arm to remove. Before we do that, I'm going to put a bungee cord on our axle here, since this is supported by the lower control arm at this point. I'm just gonna go underneath, hook that up to our strut. Gonna hook this hook around once just so it pulls it up a little bit. And now we'll go over to our lower control arm pivot points and remove those 2 bolts. So now I'm gonna get an 18mm swivel socket on the bolt side, and you'll need a 24mm wrench for the nut side. And we'll remove this. Be careful when you're loosening this, because these bolts pinching the lower control arm is the only thing holding this up right now. So once you loosen it, it can swing down and get you right in the back of the head. So now once again, for this one, make sure your head's clear. And there goes our lower control arm falling. I'll swing my socket around to the other side. Now remove your nut and your washer from both sides. So now the bolt at the back is gonna hit the sway bar here. So I'm gonna try to pull this bolt out and move my control arm to the side. It's probably not gonna work, but we'll see if we can get the clearance we need to not have to remove the sway bar. Rotate that up, and we are just barely contacting that. So we're gonna have to come over here and disconnect our sway bar mount. So now grab yourself a 10mm socket and remove these 2 bolts holding the sway bar. We shouldn't have to do anything on that side, but if we do, then we'll go over there after this. And then we'll just pull down on our sway bar enough to pop that bolt out. And then remove your lower control arm. So now that we have our knuckle out of the way, we can go back to the other side of our axle and remove these 6 15mm bolts on the flange. I'm using a 15mm swivel socket just to give myself a little bit of maneuverability here and a long extension. And we'll just go one by one removing these. I like to start on these bottom ones. If you start on the top, once you get to the bottom, it kind of tilts down. And we'll get that last one up top. Grab a hand on your axle, make sure it doesn't fall. Then once you have all those out, you can snake your axle out of the way. So now we're ready to slide our new axle into place. We're gonna have to kind of maneuver this in there. Pull down on the lower control arm a little bit. Slide that back to connect to your flange and start threading in your bolts. Now I would recommend using like a medium strength thread locker on these bolts so that they don't back out with vibrations. Now I'm not going to be doing that just because our factory CV axles are going to be going back into this. So just work your way around threading in all of your bolts, and then we can go back and tighten them down with that 15mm swivel socket. And then once you have all of your bolts started by hand, you can take that 15mm swivel socket with a long extension and tighten them down. Now you want to go in a star pattern just like you would do your lug nuts so that you're tightening this down evenly. So now we can reinstall our knuckle. You're gonna have to kind of maneuver this into the lower ball joint and slide your axle in at the same time here. And then just have that nut for your lower ball joint ready. Slide that in, thread on your lower ball joint nut. And then you can just either twist your hub or your axle to get your splines lined up. So now I'm gonna go ahead and tighten up the lower ball joint nut here. Now this was spinning on me, so I'm not gonna be able to use an impact here. So I've got a 24mm wrench and a 5/16 Allen socket. I've got my ratchet in the loosen setting. So now I'm going to take our new axle nut and just thread that on until it stops. It is a lock nut, so we'll have to hit it with an impact gun to get it all the way down. But this will just hold our hub enough, and we'll go down and tighten down the lower ball joint. So now we can tighten down our lower ball joint. Now I've got my favorite combination of things going right now, a lock nut with a stud that's spinning. So I've got a 5/16 Allen socket and a 24mm wrench. I'm gonna get my wrench on there first, and then put that Allen socket in the stud. I've got a pole jack here just underneath the hub, supporting the weight of the knuckle. This is going to turn and lock up against the pole jack so that I can just crank this nut down. If you have a 24mm ratcheting wrench, that would be ideal here, but it's not a very common ratcheting wrench size for kits. Now I'm going to reconnect my tie rod end as well as my upper control arm ball joint. Now make sure that your ABS sensor wire is in front of the ball joint. This doesn't go behind the knuckle. Once you got that, you can angle your ball joint stud down into place. And I'm just going to be using the pole jack to raise this up onto our upper control arm. Then once I got some threads coming through, I'll grab my nut, thread that onto the stud, and then I'll take my nut off my tie rod end, slide that into the knuckle, make sure this bracket for the ABS wire is out of the way. Thread that nut on, and then we can grab a 21mm socket for our tie rod end and an 18mm ratcheting wrench for our upper ball joint. So now take a 21mm socket, tighten down your tie rod, and then we'll grab our 18mm ratcheting wrench to tighten down our upper ball joint. We'll just hope our stud doesn't spin, but if it does, we have a solution for that. So now our stud didn't spin, but if yours is, I've got a custom Allen wrench here. It's just a 7/32 Allen wrench. On the shorter end, I cut about half of it off. Reason being, you can grab the bottom of the stud of the ball joint with that Allen wrench. However, once you tighten it down and you pull that stud down, you're not going to be able to get your Allen wrench out because it's going to hit on the axle. Now, if you have a ratcheting wrench on there that you can't flip the drive on, you're going to get yourself in a pretty tough spot there. So just cut a little bit off the end and you'll be good to go. Now we can go back and tighten down our axle nut. It's going to be that same 36mm axle socket from our factory one. Now once you have that tightened down, you can grab your cover and just slide that into place. Make sure it's on there straight. And then just take a rubber mallet, just give it one good tap to seat it into place. And now we can reinstall our lower strut bolts. Once you have your thread started, take your 15mm swivel socket and tighten that down. I like to go back and forth here so it tightens down evenly. Next we can reinstall our rotor. Now we have the threaded hole here for our set screw. So make sure you get the non-threaded hole of the rotor lined up with that threaded hole. You have a threaded hole here for a bolt to back your rotor off the hub. You don't want to thread it into that. Push it flat against the hub and thread in your T30 Torx bolt. And then you can throw your ratchet on the other side and tighten that down. Next we can reinstall our caliper. So we're going to pull that off our hook. Now make sure that your brake line isn't twisted up, and then you can slide this onto your rotor. And then grab a bolt, get that started, and then we can get our bottom one in and tighten those up. Now we can get our lower caliper bolt in place, get those threads started, and then we'll take an 18mm swivel socket, tighten both of those down. Now we'll reinstall our end link. slide it up to your sway bar first, and then maneuver it towards the lower control arm. Get your bolt with your bushing, slide that through the bottom up to the top, and then get your other bushing and your nut on. And then we're gonna take a 15mm socket and wrench, using a swivel socket just because I already had it out, and then tighten that down. Now we can go back and reinstall our brake and ABS line brackets. Pull those bolts out that we put back in place earlier. Thread them through the bracket. And now we have this little slot in here that's gonna sit right on this lip. Close that up. It's nice and tight in there. And then reconnect our ABS connector. And then press that clip back down into the frame. And then grab your 10mm socket, tighten down these two brackets. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the front CV axles for your 2007 to 18 four-wheel drive Silverado 1500. Thank you for watching, and for all things Silverado, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.